Hi, welcome back to my van build. This video is going to be on my alternating current or AC electrical system for my solar array. If you haven't seen my DC system and my solar array setup, please check out that video first because I am not going to be referencing the stuff I talked about in that. We're mainly just going to be talking about our AC system, GFCI outlets, and how to set up our breaker box. I'm also going to be going over an entire electrical diagram I drew up of my system at the end of this video to try to help conceptualize and explain everything a little bit easier. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that our inverter works. We have our whole system set up, our controllers going, we got our battery monitor going. So let's see if this guy turns on. And it does. Now we're gonna go ahead and turn that off so we are not working with it while it's on, but it's always important to check and make sure your appliances work before you get into setting everything else up. To begin, this isn't going to be everything you need for your system, but this is what you're gonna need to start. You'll need your inverter, a flathead and a Phillips head screwdriver, a 30 amp breaker box by Square D. You need to purchase a ground bar. I will highlight that in a second. A 20 amp breaker for every GFCI outlet you have by Square D. You're gonna need 10-3 marine grade wire, your GFCI outlet, and a box to put it in. You don't need to use 10-3 wire for everything. You could purchase 12-3 that goes to your outlets, but I just chose 10-3 because in order to ground it to the chassis, it needs to be 10 gauge wire. And it was just easier for me to buy a roll of 10-3 anchor wire. I will say, really expensive, and I barely used it. You can actually see back there that I didn't use that much of it. That roll ended up costing like $177. So if you want to save some money, get 2 different gauges of wire. I just did it because I thought it was easier. So the Renogy inverters come with outlets that you can use as a plug and play on the inverter, but it also has a neutral, ground, and live wire box so that you can connect a breaker box and connect outlets directly to the inverter as well. I've already established where I'm going to be setting up my breaker box. It's going to be right next to my DC breaker box. So I have figured that out, and that's gonna help me figure out how long my wires need to be going to and from. You're also gonna need the fittings that fit into the end of your breaker box. I wasn't able to find them, so I just ended up using rubber grommets that I found at the store. It was easier. It's not the best option because it won't hold your wires securely in place, but I might upgrade it eventually. This was just the best option I had right now. This is gonna sit here eventually, but in order for me to get everything set up and connected, I'm not gonna connect it yet. When working with an alternating current system, you have 3 wires. You have a green wire, which is your ground wire. You have a white wire, which is your neutral wire, and then you have a black wire, which is your hot or live wire. I would be lying if I said I understood how all of these things work. I will link some resources below on how alternating current systems work, but I will leave it to the professionals to explain that stuff in a better way. I just knew that I wanted to have outlets in my van. I couldn't find a bunch of descriptive videos or diagrams on how to set everything up. And I also think it's really useful to just have one video dedicated to this because I feel like it's more confusing than the rest of the stuff that I've been doing. So in my pre-wiring video, I ended up wiring all of the AC wire that's going through the van. All of my outlets are gonna be over there, and then it comes back in through here. And this part that is stripped is going to go into the bottom of my breaker, and then I have this shorter piece of wire that's going to go from the top of the breaker to this part of the inverter. I went ahead and stripped back some of the outer insulation layer for my 10-3 wire, and then I stripped the ends that are going to go into the corresponding ports here. So let's go ahead and install these into the inverter now. Next, we're going to take our Square D 30 amp breaker box and we are going to install our ground bar in there. There's a little factory screw hole in here that you can put it in. Mine jiggles around a little bit, but once I get the wires in the breaker, it'll hold pretty sturdily. Once you have that installed, you're gonna need to punch out holes on the top and the bottom in order to feed your wire into. They originally look like this. I just used a chisel and a hammer to punch them out, and I added some rubber grommets on my own. After you've done that, we are going to attach our wires from our inverter through the top of our breaker box. You're gonna add the ground wire into one of the top holes and then the live and neutral wire together into the other hole. The ground wire that is coming from the inverter is going to connect to one of these two top screw holes on the ground bar. The live wire is going to connect to the top where the breaker is going to be, this large flathead screw hole, and then the neutral wire is going to be screwed in on this neutral bar over here. All right, we've got all these installed. Now we need to run our pre-wired wire that comes from our outlets and come up through the bottom. At this point, you're gonna wanna grab your 20 amp breaker because your live wire is going to be connected through this flathead screw hole in the bottom of the breaker. Okay, I have my wires in that will connect to my outlets, and then we just pop this breaker in. All right. This is gonna get screwed in here, and then we'll move on to the outlets. I'm going to have a total of 3 outlets in my van. One of them is going to be a GFCI outlet, and then 2 are just gonna be regular outlets. They're all gonna be connected on the same circuit in parallel. You wanna connect your outlets in parallel because if you do it in series, then you actually have to have something plugged into each outlet in order for the circuit to be connected, and it won't work otherwise. My GFCI outlet is going to be my first outlet that comes from the inverter, and it is going to be down here, and then I'm gonna have 2 regular outlets downstream of it. You want to put your GFCI outlet first in order for it to work properly. If it's at the end and you end up having a short circuit before it reaches there, then it's not effective. If you get a short circuit and the GFCI outlet is first, it'll end up making the other 2 regular outlets not work. This is good because then you don't end up having heat buildup, water getting exposed on your wires, and something end up happening that you don't know about. So your GFCI outlet has a few different things that you need to know before you start connecting wires. I want to reiterate, you want to make sure your system is off and that there are no live wires, because once you are working with alternating current, your hot wire or your live wire can spark and it can end up injuring you or, you know, worse. So make sure that everything's off. You're going to get your GFCI outlet and you're going to have 5 screw holes. You'll have your green one on the bottom, which is your ground. You're going to connect your green ground wire once you've stripped it to this screw hole on the bottom. And then you're going to have 2 brass screws and 2 silver screws. The silver screws are going to connect your neutral or white wire. Your brass ones will connect your hot wire, your live wire, or your black wire. Those are all the same thing. Then you're gonna have 2 different elements on your outlet. You're gonna have your line and your load. Your line, which is exposed here, is going to come from the breaker to your outlet. This tape right here is protecting my load screws, and the reason that it's protecting it is because once you connect these, you have current running through this thing and you can end up getting shocked if your system is still on. It says it on the back of the outlet here, which is really helpful. We are going to be connecting the wires we just connected to our breaker box that came out the bottom. This is gonna go to the 2 top screws on our GFCI outlet, and then we're gonna connect to the 2 bottom ones, and that's gonna go to the next outlet. All right, so I've got my ground wire connected, my neutral, and my live wire connected to my line load. And it says here in my instructions that I should actually test this out before connecting any other outlets. So I'm gonna put this in this little box here, and then I am going to turn on my system and see if this guy works. Ooh, I'm very nervous. So it isn't lit up at all, but I actually don't remember if I bought one that lights up or not. So I'm gonna go get something to plug into it. So I don't need to get something to plug into it. I can just do the little test thing on the outlet. I forgot that I could do that. We got our test and our reset. Let's hit reset. And it's lit up green. Let's plug it in and see if it works. All right, so I got my phone charger. I realized that this blue box is too large for the GFCI outlet, so I'm gonna switch that. Okay, yeah, you can feel that. I do realize that this outlet is too large for this blue box, so I'm gonna switch it out to the slightly larger one I have. And then I might have to go pick up another one of these somewhere for my parallel outlet that I'm gonna be doing. Let's go ahead and plug it in. And it works! I'm an electrician. I'm an electrician now. That was pretty easy, honestly. I mean, the amount of time and brain power it took me to get to this point was the hardest part. Once you figure out how to do stuff, actually putting everything together is like way easier. So let's do the rest of it now. I'm gonna go ahead and turn everything off again before I start messing around with any of this. That's super important. Like, turn all of your hot wire, live wires off. You do not want to be working with live wires. So by the time I get everything done here, this is my GFCI outlet. The top white and black wires are going back to my circuit breaker, and the bottom white and black wires are going to my next outlet. And then I'm using this hex lock nut to attach 3 10-gauge ground wires together. And this is what it looks like all done. Now we've just got 2 more to do. It has started raining, so the rest of this video might be a little bit darker. I think I need to go back to the Ace Hardware and get another one of these big ones, because the second outlet that I'm going to be doing is going to look a little different since it's connected in parallel. What I did for the ground wire on this one, I'm gonna end up doing for all of the wires on the next outlet, so that they're gonna be pigtail connected together. And then the last outlet should be pretty simple. It'll just be individually connecting the wires to the outlet, and I won't have to use any of the pigtail connections. I went to the store to get another box that was bigger, and we're gonna set up our second outlet now. This section right here is coming from the last outlet. This is now gonna go into our line, and then this is going to go into our load, and this one will go to the next outlet, which will be the last outlet on our chain on this circuit. I will actually only need the ground wire to connect to the outlet and then pigtail together. So we're gonna go ahead and connect that all together now. Okay, so I've got just the line portion and the ground hooked up. I'm going to turn on the breaker and make sure that this guy works. And then I'm gonna disconnect this, and I'm gonna pigtail the ground wires together and finally connect my last outlet. Let's see if my phone charges. And it is charging. All right, 1 more outlet to go, and then we will be done with this system. Okay, I got the last outlet in. These boxes are not for outlets, obviously. I ended up drilling holes through the back because I couldn't get it seated in here. It's actually not all the way in, but I'm so annoyed right now that I just want to turn this on and see if it works, because if it doesn't, I'm gonna freak out. Last plug. She charges. All right, I'm gonna shut all this off again. So before we finish up with our AC electrical system, I want to go through a diagram I drew up of my entire system. Well, that concludes my entire solar array for now. I know that this is just the basic system. I really wanted to have a DC and an AC system so that I could really understand both. I know that with most people, having the inverter, you know, that definitely qualifies as AC and everything, but I wanted to be able to wire it and have outlets elsewhere in my van. I was trying to find step-by-step videos by van lifers doing the AC electrical system, and I ended up stumbling upon Court and Nate, who explained their whole electrical system, but didn't necessarily, I didn't find a video of them wiring the outlets. I did have video and picture references of their system when I was setting up my breaker box. And they also have a blog where they link all of the materials that they use for their electrical build. It was critical in me designing and executing my electrical build. I'm gonna link all the products I purchased down below. I'm gonna prioritize the most important ones and the name brand stuff. Some of the things like wire and ring terminals and stuff I just got from the local hardware store. But anything from Blue Sea Systems or Square D, you know, these companies that are really good companies, I will link those. I'm also gonna link Court and Nate's electrical video and then their blog post, because they have an entire spreadsheet, a Google Drive sheet of all of the products that they use and how to wire stuff correctly and what tools to use and why you're using those tools. And that's definitely something that like I would have loved to explain in these videos, but I feel like since I'm so new to this, it's not gonna be easy for me to explain it. And then doing this project on top of filming it, learning, and then trying to explain it. But electrical is one of those things that is complicated and also needs to be explained correctly so that whoever is using this as a resource is doing whatever they're doing safely. And I just don't feel confident in my capability to explain all of the whys in how I got my system together. With that being said, I hope that this video was useful for some close-ups and how I put my system together, and if you need a step-by-step explanation of how to do stuff, I hope that my video was able to be that for you. My AC electrical system cost me around $1,000, including the inverter, give or take. My entire electrical system overall ended up being around $4,000. My camera battery ended up dying and I'm so close to being done with this project. I'm just gonna film it on my phone, so sorry for the lack of quality at the end here, but I really had a hard time adding everything together when it came to buying all of the little stuff, because I just had to go back to the hardware store like a million times, and if you're doing this, you know that you'll have to do that too. But yeah, I think for a good electrical system, dedicating around $5,000 to doing everything correctly to code and as safely as possible is realistic. I think the one way that you could cut back on money is if you buy cheaper batteries. I just wanted the Battleborn ones because I knew it from the beginning. I wanted to get the most quality stuff I could get. If you like this video, please give it a like. Please give me a comment if I did anything wrong and you know about electrical. I don't claim to know anything at all, to be honest, and I had a really fun time doing this. It took me like a month of research, intense research, to get all this stuff together, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. The next videos that are coming up are going to be electrical based, like sealing and installing switches and other stuff. I actually don't really know exactly where I'm going from here. I think I might take a little bit of time off to chill because this project was so stressful. And if you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing. I would love to share my journey with more people and help people out if they need it, if they're doing a van build. And if you're not, I hope that you enjoy me talking to you as if you are, because you know, that's what I've been doing. So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna go now, and I hope that y'all are having a great day. I will see you in the next video. Bye. Rainbow! Puppy boy! Good job, Koba.